Yo, what's good? It's Jerry here. My new track, Do That, with my boy Dread MC, just came out on Hooder's compilation, Propaganda 3. I wanted to break it down for you guys and show you how I made it. Let's head upstairs and check it out.
You see the way how we do that?
All right. Here we are inside the project file. As you can see, I've got it broken down into three main groups. I got the vocals up here on top. I got the sidechain in the middle, the drums on the bottom. When I start writing my tracks, I like to start off with the drums. So let's go ahead and check those out first. That's how they sound on their own in the drop. So we got a nice little groove going. Starting off with the kick. This is a kick I made myself in a plugin called Kick 2. I've been making a lot of my own kicks recently and been using them in my own tracks. If you want to see a video about how I do that, drop a comment below. Be happy to show you guys. In this case, I added a little bit of a fade in here to the transient. I didn't want it to be quite so clicky, and in the end I ended up pitching it down to one semitone. The kick is in this group up here called Kick and Clap, and that's where I obviously also have the claps and then the reverses too. And the reason for that is because I go ahead and soft clip those two and limit the output to -7 decibels. That helps me get a little more control when I go ahead and do my mix down. This is how the claps sound on their own. I've got 2 layers and then the reverses on every second clap. Underneath, I've got this group called Filtered. So if I open it up, I got my hi-hats as well as an offbeat snare, ride, and then some other percussion. This is how it sounds on its own. And then I basically just control the filter cutoff here of a low-pass filter throughout the different parts of the track. And in the breakdowns, it's more closed like this. And then you can see the automation curve goes up here as the build progresses into the drop. Something interesting about this track is when I went ahead and started it, I learned about this new technique with like open hi-hats. And it basically was like, if you take a few different samples, keep one in the middle, pan one sample slightly left, and then pan another one slightly right, you get like a nice stereo feel. And I normally like to keep my drums in mono, but because open hi-hats are such a high-pitched instrument, I was like, okay, I'd be completely fine with adding a little bit of stereo width to them. So that's what I did here. I got this one called Shaker Hat in the middle. Open hi-hat 1 is panned a little bit to the left. Open hi-hat 2 is a little bit to the right. And then I've got this third open hi-hat layer, which I go ahead and use in the second half of the drop, as well as in the post-drop. This is how they sound all together. Right underneath that, I got this closed hi-hat, and I've got this swung using the MPC 16 Swing 61 groove. It sounds like this. And then something to notice or note on the swing is I remove it here in the build-up, and the reason for that being I wanted my build snare to be straight in this track, so not swung. It sounds like this. And then I went ahead and I removed the swing from my closed hi-hat as well as everything else that's normally swung here in the build because I didn't want to have any flamming going on. So if there's a little bit of swing versus something that's not swung, they'll be slightly out of time and you can kind of get this like flamming sound. So I went ahead and unswung them, hence the reason for these no swing MIDI clips here. Then in the breakdowns as well as in the drop, I got this classic 808 rim click. Everyone knows how this sample sounds. A little bit of reverb and delay on there. And then in the build-up, I got a 909 crash that plays right before the pre-drop vocal. And then there's one little fill over here I want to show you guys that turned out pretty cool. Let me go ahead and play it. So that is in the fake out of the second drop. And I've got this wood vibroslap as well as a reverse cymbal, a backspin that I recorded in Virtual DJ and then brought over here into the project, and then like a tom impact hit. Sounds like this. Alright, so the next thing I want to go over is the sidechain group. I got 3 groups inside of it, the mids and highs. Then I got the bass group as well as the effects. Just to run through the effects really quick, all I've got here are things like little risers and fallers like this one. I made that an operator. I got noise shots and noise sweeps like these. And then in the build-ups, I got other effects to help give it some tension as things progress into the drop. To talk about the drop itself then, I've got this bass group, and this is basically holding down all the low end, while in the high end, I've got the pitched lead, which kind of does all the magic. And this riff is really simple. I'm going to show it to you guys soloed. It's like 2 notes. And that first hit is an 808, and then after that is where the notes change a little bit. So I got this bass's main group where I've got like an 808 style tom. Then I've got this bass that I made an operator, resampled out. And then I got this other bass that I made an operator, which I bounced down to audio. And this group sounds like this on its own. And that's basically where you get the 2 notes happening like I was talking about. Moving on to the mids and highs group, here's where I've got the lead-in riff, which plays before the drums come in the drop. It sounds like this. So if I show you the patch here, it's just 2 saw waves, really simple. One panned a little bit to the left, another to the right. And I'm detuning them in opposite directions to give it like the Reese sound. I'm rolling off a little bit of the highs, saturation knob, OTT, EQ, and then a reverb send. And that leads into the pitched lead, which I call pew pew. This is what that sounds like. So this one was a lot of fun to make, and I actually made it completely on accident. So if I go ahead and show you the original patch, this is what it looks like. I was remaking a track. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was a Matroda track. And I started off trying to make the bass. But what I ended up doing was, at one point, I started adding pitch envelopes to the course pitch here at different LFOs. So if you can see on this one, this first LFO is responsible for the wavetable position, filter cutoff, as well as the mix of the distortion. Then I got this LFO2, which is on trigger mode, controlling the course pitch on an 8th note rate. Similarly, I got the LFO3 controlling the course pitch on a bar rate. And then I also got this one here doing the same thing on a half bar rate, but it's not starting at the beginning. And if I go ahead and I play this with my MIDI keyboard, you'll be able to hear how it sounds and where I got my inspiration from. So what I did is I went ahead and I recorded that, bounced it out, and I took each one of the little snippets and put it in a drum rack. The reason for that being so I could go ahead and swing them, because in Serum it would be really hard to go ahead and add that right amount of swing using just the LFOs, especially when things are on trigger mode. Then I went ahead and I kind of have this A-B going on. So in the first half of the drop, I got the upper octave playing this riff. Then I switched to this lower octave. And then in the second half of the drop, I change up the riff a little bit, as you can see in the MIDI here. And that just gives it a little bit of variation. It sounds like this. And then I also play the lower octave then afterwards. To talk about some of the processing here on this one, I'm going to go ahead and turn it all off so you can hear how it sounds. This is what it originally sounded like before any of the processing. As you can see, it sounds really dinky, like really dinky. So what I went ahead and did was I added an EQ, OTT, effector from FL Studio. Then after that, a utility, and then something that really adds a lot of the timbre to the sound is the tonal delay. I also got another EQ, radiator from Sound Toys, saturator, and then I'm automating some different parameters, which I'm going to turn all back on. And that's what gives it this really cool timbre to the sound with the tonal delay. In other parts of the track, I got a couple other quick things going on, like these zippers right here. I went ahead and I made these in Serum, and they're pretty simple to make. You just got to modulate the pitch of your oscillator. And I also have a little bit of tonal delay there too. The last thing I want to go over are Dred's vocals. He did a great job on these, and ironically, we wrote a couple different ideas after we had this first demo going, and yeah, usually your first guess is right, so we stuck with the first idea. And here's how they sound on their own if I solo them out in the breakdown.
Do that. You see the way how we do that.
I got a little ad-lib here on that word, as well as for the processing. Nothing too much going on. A little bit of overdrive, EQ, compression in FabFilter Pro C2, and a little bit of de-essing. Then I'm automating the volume of the delay and the reverb sends. But overall, very dry. And here I went ahead and chopped them up as the build went on. It sounds like this.
Do that.
You can also hear how I filter it down to kind of give a little more tension and give it like the fade out effect going into the drop. Something interesting that I want to talk about here is this sample that I resampled out, and I used the texture warp mode and played with the grain size and flux to give it a really cool effect. It sounds like this. And that's what I use as a transition element from the post drop into the second breakdown, as well as for the last part of the song. So like I said, what I ended up doing is I took the phrase, I added the warp mode and put it on texture, and then I played around with the grain size and flux till I got this cool kind of warbly effect.
Yo, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you learned something. If there's anything you have a question about, drop a comment down below. Be happy to answer, and I'll see you in the next breakdown. Peace.
How we